So, folks, we got to talk about what's happening in Kansas with trans people. To kind of sum up how we've got here, the state of Kansas took a bill that was about something completely unrelated, changed the wording so that it was about trans people in bathrooms, and in an emergency session passed it in the dead of night with no room for public comment. And then it went to the governor's desk after passing the chambers of their legislature. The governor vetoed it because it was heinous and wrong. And then the Kansas state legislature overruled the governor's veto. And so there is now a law on the books in the state of Kansas effectively declaring open hunting season on trans people in the state. So what this bill does is it allows people to hold trans people like as criminals for using the wrong bathroom, and then also civilly sue them in a court of law. So not only do you get charged as a criminal, it also could come with a lot of other consequences. So Aaron Reed, reporting on this, says, should any transgender person be caught driving without a valid license, they could face a Class B misdemeanor carrying up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. Oh, what's that? That has nothing to do with bathrooms? That's right, because this bill also stripped trans people of the ability to change their government IDs and immediately ended their ability to use said government IDs. And so not only is there now like bounty hunting of trans people in Kansas, there is an entire like invalidation of all identifying documentation in the eyes of the state in Kansas. So if you have a driver's license, you cannot legally drive anymore until you surrender your ID and get it reverted back to what it was prior to the change. This also involves any other credentials that trans people may have changed, birth certificates and the like. And it is an attempt to, a hard attempt to try and extinguish our ability to exist as recognized by the state at all. Now, typically when identification laws go into effect, there is a period of time during which people can legally continue to use their old ID while going to get a new ID. In this case, there is absolutely no period of time during which people can continue to use their ID, which means that effectively any trans person who needs to drive to their job is going to need to commit that Class B misdemeanor that carries up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. And I would also like to point out that in Kansas, trans women get sent to men's prison and trans men get sent to women's prison. Also, I believe folks in prisons on the federal level and I think in Kansas on the state level are trying their damnedest to cut off any kind of HRT. And so effectively, they are trying to set up a system where trans people are going to have to change, break the law in order to change their IDs and continue going to work. It is effectively a way to criminalize almost every trans person in Kansas. And the rationale behind it is particularly cruel. Essentially, the lawmakers behind this saying that trans people should have thought about that before they changed their IDs. And it is an unimaginable nightmare. It's when we talk about the MAGA movement being Nazis, they're literally copying Nazis. Like, part of how the Nazis targeted trans people in the past included invalidating their identifications. They're like their official documents, criminalizing them, and then putting them in prison where they would then be reformed or killed. Like I can't stress this enough. In Germany, prior to the Nazi takeover, there was documentation that allowed you to just be openly trans in the Weimar Republic. We're seeing a similar backlash right now, and it's extraordinarily disturbing. And I wish that I could say things that are helpful and useful, but in this situation I find myself extraordinarily overwhelmed with sadness and anger and just pure unadulterated rage. It's really fucked up. But here is the letter that has been sent to trans people across the state of Kansas today. Dear Kansas credential holder, House Substitute for Senate Bill 244, enacted by the Kansas legislature overriding Governor Kelly's veto, requires Kansas issued driver's licenses and identification cards to reflect the credential holder's sex at birth and directs the Division of Vehicles to comply with KSA 77-207. What does this mean for you? If you have received this notice, our records indicate that upon publication of this law in the Kansas Register on Thursday, February 26, 2026, your current Kansas credential will no longer be valid. Additionally, please note that the legislature did not include a grace period for updating credentials. This means that once the law is officially enacted, your current credential will be invalid immediately, and you may be subject to additional penalties if you are operating a vehicle without a valid credential. What do you need to do? Pursuant to this new law, if the gender/sex indication on the face of your current credential does not match your sex assigned at birth, you are directed to surrender your current credential to the Kansas Division of Vehicles. Upon surrendering the credential, you will be issued a new credential reflecting the gender identification consistent with statutory requirements. If you have any questions regarding procedures for obtaining a legally compliant credential, please contact the Kansas Division of Vehicles or visit your local driver licensing office. Can you appeal this notice? Yes. If you believe you've received this notice in error, you may appeal. Appeal rights are available under KSA 8-259. However, please be advised that the filing of an appeal will not preserve the validity of your current credential and associated driving authority. For additional information about visiting a DOV exam station, please review the following link, etc., etc. This is, frankly, this is a step closer towards exterminationist rhetoric. And I don't live in Kansas, but my heart breaks for the trans people in Kansas. Yeah, this is utterly deranged. It is absolutely meaningless to enact this other than to cause pain. That is it. That is the only reason to do this. So you can appeal. You can appeal if you think you got that notice by mistake. Is there a way to fight this? I mean, the way to fight this is to vote out the Kansas legislature. The issue with that is Kansas's legislature is over 2/3 majority MAGA conservatives. Like they've just been completely taken over by fucking Nazis. And so the way to respond to this is, frankly, there's no short-term way to respond to this. There's no like, oh, you can call them, you can show up, you can protest, and it'll get overridden. It's already the law. One of the only ways that one could possibly fight this is by, suing the state of Kansas and taking them to the Supreme Court and hoping that the Supreme Court finds in your favor and overturns said law. But that is, again, an uphill battle, as anyone who knows about the current makeup of the Supreme Court could ascertain. And the other alternative is, electing representatives in the legislature who will overturn the law there. But again, that is more of a long-term task, Pretty hard to move states when you can't drive? Yeah. I know that there are going to be people who see this story and say, "Oh, it's not that bad." Oh, you gotta Uber down to the DMV and get a new license. But there's a lot of danger in that too, right? For one thing, this seems like it would be a preliminary step to making a list of all trans adults in the state of Kansas, which I don't have to really explain to you why that is incredibly problematic at this particular period of time. Not only that, having an ID as like a trans person that reflects your actual identity is both affirming, but there's also the incredibly dangerous scenario of being outed to anyone who looks at your ID. You're going to buy alcohol, someone has to look at your ID. You're going to go into a 21 plus event, someone looks at your ID. You get pulled over by a cop in the middle of nowhere, that cop looks at your ID. When your identity and the way you present are aligned, that's fine, right? When you are outside of that bubble of acceptability, it's really fucking scary. If a cop pulls you over in the middle of nowhere and you're like a trans lady and your ID says M on it, and that cop looks at that, there are about a dozen ways that cop can completely fuck over your entire life. Yeah, to buy a gun, someone looks at your ID. There are a lot of different activities that someone looks at your ID for that could put you in a whole lot of danger. Technically, all recipients of that letter means you're on a list already. Yeah, but the act of turning in your ID solidifies your position on that list. Notice that in this letter, they're giving people a way to contest being on that list because they might, actually, I'm cis, Yeah, it's also just incredibly humiliating. A lot of trans people feel incredibly degraded by people after they look at their ID. It is really, really fucking scary. My friend is a flight attendant, so if she lands in Kansas, she's fucked. This is so bad. Yeah. Because again, they're also like doing the bathroom stuff. I mean, here's a local news report from Kansas.
This is the transgender bathroom law, and it takes effect in Kansas tomorrow.
It includes significant penalties for public agencies that don't comply, ranging from $25,000 to $125,000. Kansas now joins about 20 other states with laws limiting which public bathrooms people can use.
I have to give ID to goon over Malevilla and Blonde Blazer fanfics? That's bullcrap.
I mean, that is bullcrap, though. That's not the heart of what we're talking about at the moment. Thank you for the $5 super chat, though. I just gotta say, the nonchalance of just like throwing up a map, like Kansas joins a growing group of states that limits where people can go to the bathroom. Like, I'm sorry, as a trans person, like I look at that map and I just go, oh, so I can't go there. Like, this is a map of every place that like trans people are legally allowed to go to and legally not allowed to exist in. It's very freaky. It's scary as hell because this map keeps filling in. Keeps like the walls continue to close in on trans people, and it feels terrible. It feels terrible.
KMBC9's Andy Alcock is digging into what this means for public schools, cities, and other local governments, plus how enforcement would work.
I overhear comments. I have been yelled at a few times, but I just keep going. Like, I love my life.
Hazel Krebs told us about her experiences using public restrooms as a trans woman. Under new Kansas law, Hazel would be violating it by using the women's restroom in a government building, including schools. State Representative Susan Humphreys helped push the measure past Governor Laura Kelly's veto.
I think women and girls need to feel safe. They need to feel protected.
Do women have anything to fear from you?
Absolutely not. I mean, I fear men just as much as other women out there.
According to the website worldpopulationreview.com, less than 1% of American adults are transgender. In Kansas, it's 0.56%. In Missouri, 0.2%.
Yeah, so obviously we need to dedicate 95% of the resources of the Republican Party to discriminate against trans people, obviously.
I have a half-sister who can't visit my other siblings in Montana because she's trans? WTF?
Yeah, she would not be safe. She would not be safe.
The smallest percentage of any state.
I feel targeted. I feel marginalized.
It's not necessarily about the trans community.
Under the new law,
Oh, it's not necessarily about the trans community. It's just, directly aimed at trans people.
Isn't it illegal for MAGA people to disown their LGBTQ family members due to that being classified as a form of abuse?
I mean, probably. But you're never going to find a cop that will ever enforce that law.
Hazel could be fined, criminally charged, and also sued for using the women's restroom. We asked State Representative Humphreys if there are specific instances of women's restrooms
It's also even weirder that they probably won't enforce any laws against trans guys equally, who they view as confused lesbians. They literally are ***** shy.
I mean, that's the thing, right? These laws are bullshit. These laws are just absolutely bullshit. It's all based on the vibes of bigots. Because I gotta be honest with you, if you're a normal person, you aren't going around every day going, cis, 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 trans, cis, 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 trans! You're not doing that. Only actual fucking freaks do that, They're building a world that caters to the absolutely most bigoted freaks that exist. And who benefits from this? Excellent question, I am Lem. Specifically, Republicans do. Republicans believe that in lieu of doing things that might materially benefit their constituents, instead, what they're going to do is fight the culture war. And they love fighting the culture war because it allows them to look like they are doing something while actually providing nothing and no material benefit to their constituents. So that allows them to give their donors all of the material benefits, all of the tax cuts, all of the benefits, etc. And it dupes people on the ground into thinking, look at all of them, look at all of my elected MAGA representatives. Look at them go. They're doing so much to make my life better. But in reality, literally nothing is being done to improve the lives of MAGA constituents. They're being robbed blind and they just don't realize it. Yeah, so they're about to get to this part. I'm going to back it up a little bit.
Instances of women's restrooms being violated, prompting her support of
Feel marginalized.
It's not necessarily about the trans community.
Under the new law, Hazel could be fined, criminally charged, and also sued for using the women's restroom. We asked State Representative Humphreys if there are
or even sued. So I want to make clear what the situation that is being set up here is. That it is illegal and you can be jailed for using the wrong restroom for restrooms on state property. But the other part of the bill is that in private restrooms, if someone else in that restroom thinks that you're trans, they now can sue you for damages, for being someone who I felt emotionally violated because you were peeing in the stall next to me. So that's what they're doing right now. Now, I want you guys to put yourselves in the shoes of a trans person. Are you willing to go out and use a restroom at a private business or a public park or anything like that if you know that it carries the risk of being sued for thousands of dollars? most people would just not do that.
You know they aren't performing girth certificate checks at men's restrooms.
They never will. More like growers and not showers. Am I right? The whole lot of MAGA. Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs and injecting a little bit of levity into a story that I am fucking livid about. I do apologize. It's difficult to make jokes when I'm this angry. But basically, you can, if somebody suspects someone else in a bathroom of being trans, they can take them to court now. It doesn't even matter if that other person is trans. They can just sue them anyway. Very fucking frustrating.
Republican lawmakers literally out here quoting the Vine, "Look at all those chickens."
Indeed. But, like, it's a horrific catch-22. Trans people in Kansas are damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. Unless you happen to be a trans person who can, like, work from home and, like, not have to participate in public life, like, this is a direct threat to your ability to exist. And, again, I'm seeing people continuing to speculate about why Republicans are doing this. Republicans are doing this as a distraction from the fact that they're robbing you blind. That's it. That is it. You and I, we see that they're robbing people blind, but their own constituents in MAGA world don't see it. Because they're too distracted by, like, the shiny object of, like, discriminating against trans people. That's it. Full stop. And you might say, oh, well, they do it because they don't care about trans people. And, like, yes, that is why they pick us as a target. They pick us as a target because they do not care whether or not we live or die. We are scapegoats to them. It's so fucking frustrating and infuriating. I mean, Natalie's cyber tips, in a just world, this would be struck down by higher courts as it gets sued into oblivion, as lawsuits from the ACLU, etc. progress. However, with the current Supreme Court of the United States, genuinely, it's a coin flip. It is a coin flip whether or not SCOTUS would uphold this or, slap it down. And my guess is it's not an even 50-50 coin flip. It's a weighted coin towards, the negative option here. I mean, like, it's not even like a callback to, like, black and white restroom laws, though I see why you would make the comparison, the White Run Guard. Like, because there are no alternative bathrooms that trans people can use. Like, there is no bathroom that I could use in Kansas where I would be okay. Like, I can't use the women's restroom because they've made that illegal, or they've made it so that someone can sue me. But in the similar vein, someone could sue me for using the men's room. There isn't a way to use a restroom in a capacity that doesn't open you up to a lawsuit. Because the lawsuit component of this is dependent on the bigotry of someone who might just happen to be near a bathroom when you need to use it. So there is no winning combo here. There's no, like, actual solution to this in terms of, like, trans people behaving differently or doing anything differently. It's just an effective way to try and legislate trans people out of the state, which is an impossible task because trans people are going to continue to be born and live in Kansas. There's no way that the same way gay people, even if you made being gay illegal, are going to continue to be born and live in whatever place that is. You know? This is all just fucking malice and cruelty. It's all just malice and cruelty so that their base can nod, satisfied that their party is doing something for them, while their party gives, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to corporations and the wealthiest people to ever exist. That's true, Alpha Appalachia. Men do use men's restrooms. Very good. And women use women's restrooms. Yeah, and that's the other part, which is that the reason I say this is like a first step towards exterminationist rhetoric and laws is specifically because the goal of bathroom bills has been since their beginning, it's been to force trans people out of the ability to exist in public, the ability to like go to work, the ability to spend their time where they will. And the next step beyond this is preventing trans people from being employed, preventing trans people from getting married or having kids. It continues from here. And I imagine a lot of MAGA people are celebrating about that. They view it as inevitable, ignoring the fact that their children and their grandchildren are going to pretend like they died 50 years ago rather than spend Thanksgiving with them over the fact that they are just openly hateful and bigoted. Eventually we get pink triangles again. I mean, I would argue that effectively this is like the pink triangle law of Kansas. This is designed to identify the trans people in the state. Couldn't the opposite be done? If a trans person could be sued, then they could do a countersuit to the other person. I mean, in theory, but the law is going to be applied against the trans person in this case, and not the cis person. Yeah, exactly, Jayla Rose. Like, if you have to stop at like a rest stop in the middle of nowhere and use a bathroom, like, what happens to you if you're like a trans femme-presenting woman and you feel like, well, the law says I need to go into, the men's room? What happens to you if somebody else is using that restroom in the middle of nowhere? You're all by yourself. The amount of danger that this opens trans people up to cannot be overstated. Comrade Girl 2018, during World War II and during the Holocaust, trans people were also sent to the death camps, and they were forced to wear pink triangles. That's where the pink triangle comes from in the LGBTQ movement. Honestly, I'm speechless. It's terrifying.
Are specific instances of women's restrooms being violated, prompting her support of this law.
I haven't kept a list, but I've heard about it.
Are there specific instances of the thing that you've just passed like an incredibly fascistic piece of draconian legislation about? Well, I've heard some stories. Oh, look, someone else who's getting their policy positions from Dave down at the hardware store with the tinfoil hat. Fuck, these people do not give a shit. They don't, again, it's all just vibes-based evil. It's vibes-based bigotry up in here. Their entire politics is based on just vibes, man. It's vibes and shoving comically large sacks of money towards the Epstein class. That is the MAGA movement right now.
Free said governments now must make what she called a reasonable effort to keep same-sex restrooms and locker rooms that way, or face daily fines of up to $125,000 for multiple offenses.
Oh yeah, that's another component of this, is that private businesses have to try and enforce their own restroom designations. Otherwise, they can be sued for $125,000. Good luck operating a business in Kansas. Is there any coming back from this? Sure, but it takes the effort of people getting involved.
Hey Jack, how goes the low stakes stream? Something tells me we have the best laid plans of mice and men type situation here.
Pluvius, the low stakes stream idea that I had yesterday was pretty contingent on not, the world being the way it is right now. Who will enforce that? Businesses. Again, the businesses are being legally required to enforce their bathroom designations. Otherwise, they will be fined by the state for up to $125,000. And you can bet your ass that transphobic, bigoted pieces of shit are going to be going into businesses, and if they see a trans person, well, that's going to be a problem both for the business as well as the trans person. I mean, I guess, maybe one way around this is all bathrooms become, like,
Most
just
people
family
don't even know
bathrooms,
that the famous photos of Nazis burning books were taken at the first European Institute to perform gender-affirming surgeries, and
Yep.
they're burning trans literature.
Yep. Most of the prominent photos of book burnings is of irreplaceable research on trans people. Yeah, Diphallus Spartus, or anyone who is clocked as a trans person.
Andy Alcock, KMBC 9 News.
A statement from the city of Overland Park said leaders this week are analyzing the impact of the new law on their operations. The statement also said leaders support home rule. It gives the city control over facilities, personnel, and civil rights matters.
God, it's barely a blip. It's barely a blip even in, like, Kansas's own local news. You know? It's so fucking disgusting. And I do want to point out here that this is not a localized movement. Like, if you are a person who is deep into MAGA, you might be surprised to learn that, in fact, your elected representatives aren't getting their marching orders from you as a constituent. They're getting their marching orders from massive think tanks and super PACs that are related to the Heritage Foundation. And I want to play this clip for you guys, which is from Kevin Roberts. Now, for those of you who don't know who Kevin Roberts is, he is the president of the Heritage Foundation and the guy behind Project 2025. Here he is on the Patrick Bet-David show.
Both sides agree on that for people 18 and younger. In fact, it's 80 or 80-20.
Both sides agree on that.
On that. Where there continues to be disagreement.
Did you say 85?
Yep,
That's
85 in some polls. Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah.
And that's why there have been some really good policies, whether Trump executive orders or also state laws passed. And Heritage has been part of that. But where there continues to be disagreement is...
Heritage continues to be a part of that statewide push. He's openly telling you that he is showing up state by state trying to get trans people legislated out of existence.
On what you do with adults. At Heritage, we believe that so-called transgender surgery is bad for anybody because of what you saw in Rhode Island yesterday. Not to be clear, not that everyone who has gone through that surgery would do that kind of thing. There does seem to be a mounting body of evidence that suggests a correlation between that surgery at any age, mental health issues, and increasingly, although we're running the numbers on this at Heritage, acts of violence. We have to come to grips with that.
Yeah, we have to run the numbers on trans violence. Hey, I wonder if the Heritage Foundation will ever run the numbers on, cis white men violence. I wonder if they're going to take a look at the number of cis white men who engage in mass shootings, for example. Oh, they're not? Oh, that's so strange. That's so weird.
As a society that, in a way that transcends left versus right, because this really is about the human condition. If we continue to get that wrong, then these conversations we're having about family policy and restoring our institutions and authenticity are going to be for naught.
God.
It's not like our justice system was already doing just fine handling cases at a 3% level. This is just going to encourage anti-trans SLAPP suits.
Oh God, 1000%. It's going to be legislative chaos. And I guarantee you, like a bunch of the lawsuits are going to be geared towards non-trans people because, again, cis people are terrible at understanding and clocking for trans people. Every single cis person's like, I can always tell, and you guys fucking can't. You guys are going to be suing each other saying, well, you look too much like a man in the bathroom. You look too much like a woman in the bathroom. You were too flamboyant in the bathroom. You were wearing pants in the bathroom instead of a skirt. It's going to escalate in absolutely predictable and destructive ways. I'm hearing that because Kansas actually suspended these driver's licenses, even moving to another state isn't a fix because you have to resolve with Kansas DMV first before another state would be able to issue another license. I'm not entirely sure that that is the case, but I don't know. I would imagine it varies from state to state.
Once again, my policy idea of putting all cishet men somewhere else until they can prove they know how to act in society would fix so many societal woes.
They can never fucking tell. It's true. It's true. They never fucking can.
One of my coworkers got fired because to protest a trans femme employee wearing a dress, he wore an SS uniform stating, "Family history."
What? That's nuts. Yo, bro literally just had an SS uniform sitting around. I do not fucking believe that. I do not fucking believe that. At all. Jesus. I mean, at least your workplace fired him, but God. When we say MAGA has a Nazi problem, they really got a fucking Nazi problem, okay? Probably has something to do with how they keep doing all of the things the Nazis did. God. But this clip isn't done yet.
And
how do you
optimist.
address this, though? How do you address this?
You outlaw it.
You outlaw it?
Because it's bad for the human person.
So then what do you do with Caitlyn Jenner? You outlaw, you prevent her from being able to do the surgery? You prevent, you guys, your position is that you don't even allow people to do that.
It's proven to be terrible for the human person.
When was it illegal? When did it become legal?
I don't remember the year, but it obviously has, the number has intensified over the last 12 years.
Can you look it up, Rob?
Like, even Patrick Bet-David is like, whoa, that's you'd make it illegal for, like, Caitlyn Jenner to exist? Because, like, that's the one trans person he knows of who's prominent, you know? And, like, even Patrick Bet-David, who is extraordinarily homophobic, is like, that seems like a really extreme here.
So is it more, and again, you're not, I'm not asking you a scientist that I'm asking, no. Hey, but I wonder how much of this is the medication they put in their bodies that makes them behave this way, that there needs to be accountability for that, to say, hey, this is what we can no longer.
And we like that idea too. One of the reasons is that we not only work in coalitions, but we often work toward an ultimate goal via incremental steps. In fact, sometimes people call us radical incrementalists. We're willing to take a quarter of the enchilada if we can keep working there. Mm-hmm. So if that's the kind of thing that policymakers can agree on left and right, Heritage would be fully supportive of that, knowing that ultimately we have an ideal position that would be much stronger than that. Both sides.
I mean, like, he just out and says it. He says, we're going to start small. We're not going to outright outlaw trans people from existing, but that is our ultimate goal, and we're going to take little baby steps until we get there. And, like, that's what they're doing here in Kansas. This is one of their baby steps. Kansas is one of the places in this country where they've been trying out this stuff. And that is what we're seeing here. What we're seeing here is the fulfillment of Heritage Foundation president bigotry, Kevin fucking Roberts, man. It's just overwhelming. And I do want to, like, just touch on one last thing. Okay? Which is that all of this is predicated on a lie. All of this is predicated on Kevin Roberts going out there and going onto a show and just lying full-throatedly and saying, oh, we have evidence that being trans is unhealthy for you. We have evidence being trans is, just so unspeakably bad that we have to ban it and make it illegal to even exist as a trans person. And that's just a lie. He has no evidence to that effect. Not the lawsuits. The evidence that they routinely bring up are stuff like the comedically bad Brown University study, where they were like, oh, rapid onset gender dysphoria is a really problematic thing. All of the kids are getting rapid onset gender dysphoria. Why is that? Oh no, it's spreading like a societal contagion. By the way, societal contagion is borrowed from how the Nazis talked about LGBTQ people. But, no one wanted to deal with that when I brought it up continuously over the last several years, but, you know, they just openly embraced Nazi rhetoric talking about trans people, and the rest of the world just didn't notice, despite the fact that we all continuously yelled about it from the rooftops. Instead, we got Gavin Newsom coming out and being like, oh man, we need to talk less about this pronoun stuff. It's nuts. It's nuts. Because there's no substance to their lies. It is all relying on people not looking at the actual data.
The Blair White to Blair White nationalist pipeline is massive.
It's true. Kate Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. But something to understand here is that it is all fucking lies. Like that rapid onset gender dysphoria study that coined the term, that spread the lie that this was a societal contagion, and pretty soon all the kids are going to be trans if we don't stop it here and now. That study did not study children who were trans. That study instead had to be revised because what it actually looked at was responses from parents on their perceptions of their kids coming out as trans. And then it had to be revised again because what it was actually studied wasn't just, oh, the parents of trans kids reacting to them coming out as trans. The researchers behind that study specifically sought out parents of trans kids who had recently come out who were transphobic. They recruited respondents for this study from transphobic groups on the internet. And like, it's mind-blowing, but effectively, the entire thesis of rapid onset gender dysphoria was because that these transphobic parents were taken aback by the fact that their kids came out. And so from their perspective, it was just, one day my kid was trans. Because their kid didn't feel comfortable or safe being trans, being themselves in front of their transphobic parent. Because they knew their parents were transphobic. It's so fucking stupid. People have been asking for a link to the study. Here it is. In PLOS 1. Not a great journal, but like that's what we got. Here it is. From years ago, from 2019, right? Or the correction from 2019, originally published in 2018. And not only that, but Brown University had to put out a statement about this study because it was so fucking bad. I'll link this in chat too. All right, you guys can look at this. The Garbage Princess, thank you for the $5 super chat. Appreciate the support, and I'll be on the Transatlantic Call-In show tomorrow, so excellent synergy. But like, it's all fucking bullshit. And I want to add an additional thing here, which is there was a recent Freedom of Information request over in the UK related to the Tavistock clinic. Now, if you aren't as plugged into things as I am, you'd be forgiven for not knowing what Tavistock was. And the Tavistock clinic was essentially a gender clinic in the UK. A really prominent one, very famous, well-regarded. About 4 years ago now, the UK media had a hysteria around the Tavistock clinic. Essentially saying that, you know, they were transing kids who didn't want to be transed, and there were so many complaints against the Tavistock clinic for malpractice, and, you know, like they were transing the kids, they're transing everybody. Like, it was just absolute hysteria. And I want to really point out here, this is some great reporting by the Yorkshire Bylines. Okay? The real Tavistock clinic scandal, 1,000 court cases that never materialized. So what does that mean, right? Well, let's take a look. There were numerous allegations of negligence, particularly with regards to access to gender-affirming care. The Daily Mail referred to Tavistock as a transing factory, while the Sun called it a discredited NHS clinic that happily handed out hormone drugs to children. Like, this is what they were talking about, you know? Yeah, they're transing the cats, they're transing the dogs. In what may have been the most strongly worded of all of these articles, on the 11th of August 2022, the Times ran with the headline, Tavistock Gender Clinic to be sued by 1,000 families. And the text, the Tavistock Gender Clinic is facing mass legal action from youngsters who claim they were rushed into taking life-altering puberty blockers. And would it shock you all to know that that never happened? In a Freedom of Information request to Tavistock and Portman NHS Foundation Trust, we asked them, Yorkshire Bylines, with regards to the former Gender Identity Development Service, for the period between 2012 and 2022, please provide the following information. 1, the total number of complaints made about this clinic by parents of trans/non-binary minors. 2, number of complaints by families that felt gender-affirming care had been provided wrongly or inappropriately. 3, any synopsis of the nature of these complaints would be appreciated, but can be omitted if unavailable or if it would make the request arduous. 4, number of complaints pursued via law firm Pogust Goodhead, the law firm that was supposedly going to head these massive numbers of lawsuits. Let's see. Between 2012 and 2022, there were a total of 142 complaints made to the clinic, although the party making the complaint was not recorded. The number of these where it was felt that gender-affirming care was provided wrongly or inappropriately, all of 8 over a 10-year period for a clinic that could have up to 12,000 users at any given time. Over the course of 10 years, less than 1 per year. Just some quick back of the napkin math. All right. That's, if every year they have up around 12,000, patients, you're looking at a pool of, in a total 10-year time, let's say 120,000. There are 8 complaints. It's so low that it has to go to E-5 on a calculator. Like, the level of hysteria around this is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. And I don't know what to tell you guys. The Tavistock Clinic was used as one of the reasons why gender-affirming care for children had to be outlawed. Not just in the UK, but here in the United States. Here in the United States. And so, I gotta be honest here, guys. It's all colossal bullshit. Because there's one additional detail here. One additional detail. Despite the fact that there were 8 complaints, there's no mention in the Freedom of Information request of whether or not these complaints were upheld by any of the overseeing bodies, of course. The law firm, Pogust Goodhead, in the UK, when asked about how many cases they represented against NHS, against the Tavistock Clinic, when they were alleged to have over 1,000 families suing the Tavistock Clinic, not a single one. I want you to understand that this entire movement is predicated not on any kind of factual basis, but upon hatred entirely, full stop. And that hatred has now taken over entire states in the United States of America. And we have to organize to stop this, folks. I'm not familiar with the organizing ground game in Texas or in Kansas or Florida. But if you are in one of those red states where these oppressive laws are being passed, it's partly your duty to organize. If you are someone, especially someone who's cis, straight, someone who's not in danger of being attacked by the state, show up at your local meetings for the Democratic Party. Show up at your local DSA meetings. It is so fucking important that we finally get these people out. And by these people, I'm talking about Republicans and Democrats. I'm talking about the Democrats that are fucking abandoning us in our hour of need. There are plenty of great people on the ground working hard every day to keep their constituents safe. You know, I know that that is true in Kansas. I know that that is true in Texas. I know that that is true in Florida. And I know that we can find the helpers wherever we are in this country. But we need to organize with fellow helpers right now, because right now, many states are occupied by these Nazi forces. Well, we got to call them like we see them, folks. And you are far more vulnerable and far more at risk if you are not organized. If you are unorganized and alone, they're going to come after you first. We got to get organized. And we got to kick these bastards to the curb. And then we got to make sure they can never, ever within our lifetimes hold power again. They cannot be allowed to spread this hatred to our children and our children's children. That's what I got to say. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. And folks in Kansas, please stay safe and don't lose hope.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.